Good morning, everybody. This is College Football Show Man coverage with Knoxville Nate and Mr. James Bonneville. Hope everybody's having a great Sunday morning. It is August 7th, 2022. It is getting really close to the beginning of college football season. I can't believe the summer has gone this fast. I can't believe we have football right around the corner. Fall camps have begun, and it's almost that time, James. What are you
Hey,
thinking
19
about?
days away.
What are you thinking about this? We got the season to start, man. We don't even have to talk about anything at all anymore, except for games coming up real soon. I'm looking forward to that. I hope you are.
Absolutely. I mean, 19 days away from Nevada at New Mexico State. And then 20 days away, we kick it off that morning with some great games. I mean, from Dublin, Ireland, in the Avia Stadium, you got Nebraska playing at Northwestern. Now, Dublin is now considered a home field for Northwestern. I'm guaranteeing the stadium will be louder in Dublin than it is at Ryan Field in Chicago or in Evanston. What do you think?
I don't know. You know what? I've actually been to that stadium a couple times to watch the Buckeyes play against Northwestern. It's kind of a weird, it's kind of a weird vibe in there. But they have pulled off some upsets over the years in that stadium. I don't know whether or not they'll have a bigger advantage by going to Dublin. I think it's kind of a cool thing. I've really enjoyed it a couple years ago when Notre Dame played over there. I think they played Boston College. Is that right?
Yeah, they played. I thought they played Navy too at one point over there. There's been a
I
few
believe.
games over in Ireland.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though. So, but obviously, today we're talking Big Ten. We're going to do our Big Ten preview, and we are going to discuss a little bit about that first weekend because that's going to be a big one with Notre Dame coming in to the shoe. I'm not sure what I think about that being the first game. I'd kind of like that to be like game two or three, but hell, might as well start it off with a bang, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, granted, if there's a year you want to go up against Notre Dame, it'd be this year where they have a lot of holes to fill. And let's be honest, Ohio State is pretty stacked, especially on that offensive side of the ball. I mean, I'm hearing some people saying this is their best offensive line in some time. I'm not sure if I agree with that quite yet, but we'll wait and see. I mean, receiving core wise, I mean, they're the deepest by far in the country. And you got CJ Stroud, a Heisman Trophy winner, too, as well. I mean, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, he could potentially win the Heisman Trophy this year, and
Yeah.
he was right there last year. They gave it to Bryce Young, but you could have given it to C.J. Stroud. I think the only reason he
Oh,
didn't win was that loss, obviously, to the team up north and the loss to Oregon. If they win
yeah.
both those games, I think he wins the Heisman. And it certainly wasn't his fault that they lost those two games. He played pretty good in both contests. So we'll get into that. They had the kickoff press conference down on the Birmingham radio station out of Tuscaloosa for Nick Saban this week. And when asked about last year and asked about losing in the championship game, he said that, well, obviously, when you don't win a title at Alabama, it's a disappointing season, which I agree with. And then he said that last year he was pretty inspired by what the team did because of the fact that they were going through a rebuild. And I listened to uh, the SEC lovers on ESPN talk about how, yeah, if Nick Saban says it, it must be true. And then I thought about it and I was like, how is this a rebuild? You had the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. You had Brian Robinson, a senior at running back. You had Evan Neal, one of the first offensive tackles taken. I think he was the first offensive tackle taken in the draft by the New York Giants, left tackle. You had Jamison Williams who transferred over and one of your top wide receivers. You had John Mechie, who was a junior and had been in the program for 3 years. How the hell is it a rebuild if half your starters are fourth or fifth year seniors, James?
Well, not only that, when you got guys on your third string depth chart that are 4 and 5 star recruits, tell me how is that rebuilding? That's just
It's
reloading. I mean, they in some of these cases, a lot of these guys are getting better game experience in practice, not even playing games, by going up against the guys they're playing with. And I find it foolish, but once again, it's kind of funny how Nick Saban's going into the Lou Holtz school of thought, where he tries to downplay the team, where quite frankly they're going up against, let's say, Elon, and he would be talking about how this is the greatest Elon team he has seen in the last 100 years, and that Alabama could get beat. I mean, Alabama just is year to year is going to be incredible. And I think that will not change until you see somebody new at the helm in Tuscaloosa. And I would not want to be the guy to come after that guy because you're always going to be compared to Saban unless you keep the tradition rolling.
Yeah, there's nobody that's going to be able to do what he has done.
God, no.
I mean, I think that they could potentially keep things going if they get the right guy in place, but there's no way on earth that it's going to look like this. And we talked to John Wilkerson last week, a guy who's worked here in Knoxville for 29 years and has seen and covered the entirety of Nick Saban's career. And he explained that he was just blown away by what he's seen, and I agree with him. I mean, it's been amazing. You can't really compare him to anybody else. And he is the greatest coach of all time, in my opinion.
Agreed.
But just because he's the greatest coach doesn't mean that you have to approve and agree with everything he says. And he can say it all he wants, that it's a rebuild. But when you go to the national championship game, when you've got a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback, when you have a senior running back and a senior wide receiver leading the team, not to mention a junior who's your second best wide receiver, it's not a rebuild. I mean, I don't care what you say. Christian Harris was their starting linebacker. You had Anderson Jr., the defensive end, who was in his his second year, right?
Yes.
And he's going to be gone after this year, but he was coming back after an unbelievable freshman season. So it's just not a rebuild to me, but you know what? He could say whatever he wants.
He says stuff like this all the time. I mean, remember a few months back when he took his pot shot at Jimbo Fisher in Texas A&M? I mean, quite frankly, looking back at it now, I think he did it strictly to amp up his own booster base, saying, if we want to play this way, boosters, you got to step up to the plate. But I mean, this is just, it's getting old after a while.
Yeah, I agree. But he can say whatever he wants. He's the greatest coach of all time.
Absolutely.
We'll give him that. But you know what? I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for Alabama this year. I think, the SEC West has gotten better. I think, Ole Miss, although lost a lot of people, I think he's got something going there in Lane Kiffin and in Oxford. And I think Mississippi State's going to be better with Coach Leach. And I think Texas A&M is going to be better. They lost to him last year and they have to play him again. I think LSU is going to be better. You can say whatever you want about Brian Kelly, but I believe he's a better coach than the Raging Cajun. So,
oh God, yeah. I mean, everywhere the guy's gone, he's won. I mean, heck, people forget what he did at Grand Valley State in Division II. And I mean, it's not like it was him and a bunch of nobodies. I mean, heck, he had Jerry Kill over at Saginaw Valley State. I mean, that conference was incredibly difficult at the D2 level, and he was winning natties at the D2 level.
Right. And, then he won at Central Michigan. Then he won at Cincinnati.
Yep.
Then he won at Notre Dame.
Yep.
And now he's going to LSU, which the last three coaches, correct me if I'm wrong, that has been there have won the national championship.
Correct.
So I think he'll be just fine. And I think, it's not going to be a cakewalk for the Crimson Tide this year in the SEC. I think they're going to have all they want getting through the conference. And there's a couple teams that can challenge them in the college football playoff as well. So talking about some of those teams, let's get into our Big Ten preview. I want to go ahead and start it off. I'm going to talk a little bit about who I think is going to win in the West and talk about the Big Ten West. You know my feeling on the divisions in the Big Ten. I think it's a joke. No offense to you, but almost every good team in the conference, in my opinion, is on the eastern side. So I don't know who the hell designed this breakdown of putting Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State all in one side of the conference. But I think whoever did it is an idiot. But that being said, we've got the Big Ten West, which last year was won by Iowa. They finished the season 10-3 until they lost the last game, and so they actually finished 10-4. But 7-2 in the conference was good enough to get them into the Big Ten title game. As we saw in that game, the offense was just not enough. To be honest, a lot of people are picking Wisconsin this year to win the West, but I'm still not sold on Graham Martz, and I'm just not believing it till I see it. And to be honest with you, I know this is kind of going out there, but I'm picking your Gophers to win the side of the conference. I really think they've got a lot coming back with their quarterback. I know they lost some people in their left tackle and also a couple of wide receivers and other folks, but I'm picking them to win the conference. And, something about your coach, James, I like him, and I think he's a winner, and I think he's going to get it done. What do you think?
I'm personally going with Wisconsin. You look at Braylon Allen, who I personally, as you've seen in our fantasy preview, I've named the number one running back in the country, which is saying something when you have Travion Henderson at Ohio State. Within the conference, you have Bijan Robinson down in Texas. But you look at the numbers, the 17-year-old out of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, put up last year were mammoth. And that Wisconsin offensive line traditionally, especially in run protection, has been phenomenal. Now, they have relied heavily on that defense, and Jim Leonard has done a phenomenal job. He brings back some strength on that defensive line with Keanu Benton, the junior nose tackle of 6'4", 316-pounder, as well as defensive end Isaiah Mullins. And they are both studs on that defensive line. Nick Herbig is going to be back and will be probably in that hunt for the Butkus Award. He's just a stud linebacker out of California. And they do all that zone blitzing where you really either you got to snap the ball right away or you got to wait 10 seconds till they shift to figure out what they're going to do. Now they lost all four of their defensive backs, but they brought a couple transfers in. Cedric Dort, the senior from Kentucky, he started 27 games for the Wildcats, is now going to be coming in and playing one side of the corner, and then Jay Shaw to UCLA, who started all last year for the Bruins defense. They need that defensive backfield to step up because I think you're going to have issues, especially against people like Purdue and Minnesota, who are going to throw the ball a lot more. If they can't get in the backfield and you're relying on those D-backs, that could be the difference between Wisconsin winning the conference or not winning the conference. But I'm betting on Jim Leonard right now.
Yeah, they also got Justin Clark, a graduate transfer cornerback out of Toledo, who should be in the mix. And they've got Alexander Smith and I believe it's Ricardo Hallman, who's a redshirt freshman, who should all compete in that secondary. So, I just don't believe in their quarterback.
Graham Mertz. But, granted, you look at Braylon Allen, that kid, honest to God, he reminds me a clone of Eddie George. When Eddie played at Ohio State, and the kid did as a 17-year-old. He was just trucking people. The only game where he really saw problems was the game against Minnesota, and Minnesota did an incredible job with their stunts and getting their linebackers through those holes and hitting him in the backfield so he couldn't get the ball rolling. The second half alone, I don't think he had more than the 5-yard carry at all in the second half against Minnesota up in Minneapolis last year at Huntington Bank.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. This guy's a great running back, but if you stack the box and game plan your entire defensive scheme around stopping the run and make Graham Mertz beat you, I'm just not sure he can do it. And that's why I'm picking Minnesota. I like Tanner Morgan. I know he's kind of an unheralded quarterback, but he's tough as nails.
Honestly, I could see Minnesota number 2. My biggest concern with them is you're only bringing one starting offensive lineman back and John Michael Schmitz. Now, John Michael Schmitz is,
he's a good center.
He's really good. He's the number 1 center coming back in all of college football. Some people put him number 2. He is a phenomenal talent, and the guy's a mauler. He blew me away in 2019. as the 6th offensive lineman. I mean, this guy wasn't even starting, and he still made all conference. That's how good he was.
Yeah.
If Mo Ibrahim can come back and show exactly what he showed in that Ohio State game, and Kirk Ciarrocca gets back to throwing the slants to Dalen Wright, who I think has got a huge upside. 6'5" receiver out of Texas, Mesquite, Texas, was originally at Texas A&M, a 5-star recruit. This kid's got athleticism like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
And then you still got Chris Ottman-Bell at the other side. You got Daniel Jackson out of Kansas, as well as Michael Brown Stevens. You may know his uncle is this is killing me now. The singer John Legend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, they've got the receiving core. Defensively, I love their defensive backs. Justin Whaley, the true freshman last year, was a stud. His brother plays at Mississippi State. The only question I really have is really at the defensive tackle position, where they get a lot younger quicker. I mean, Trill Carter out of Georgia is really going to step it up. If they can get the passing game going and the defensive tackles can shut down that interior, I could see them win the Big Ten West.
Yeah, no, I'm picking them just because I like the coach. I like the quarterback. Those are the two most important pieces to a college football team, in my opinion.
Yep.
You mentioned that they lost a lot on the offensive line, but they did pick up Quinn Carroll, a graduate transfer from Notre Dame.
He's from Minnesota.
Edina, Minnesota. Yep, 6'6", 310 pounds. I think he'll come in and start right away. They also picked up another graduate transfer out of Michigan, kid from Aledo, Texas, Chuck Filaga. 6'6", 330. Those are two big boys, and I think they're both are going to come in and start immediately for the Gophers, and I'm picking them to win. Second place for me is going to be probably I'm going to pick Wisconsin. So I've got Wisconsin at number 2, and then behind them, I think I've got to go Iowa. What do you think after number 1?
Agree, but I want to talk about one guy in Minnesota's offensive line who I think both Falaka and Quinn Carroll got injured and got buried in the depth chart because of injuries. But a guy who I saw, especially during the COVID year, who I was incredibly impressed with, a raw talent that Brian Callahan has developed is going to be next year's left tackle, and that is Arete Ursary out of Kansas. This kid is going to be special. This kid could be really special at left tackle. 6'6", 325. He came in at like 340 and came down. Incredible footwork. He just was raw. He's got to make sure he keep his pad level down, much like we had the problem with Daniel Falalele on that. But this kid's a mauler. And I think he could, if you see Ibrahim come back, I think over that left side between him and Quinn Carroll, both those kids are maulers. I mean, I remember watching Carroll playing for Edina against Eden Prairie, and the kid was unreal. I'm very high on those two guys coming back, but I agree with you on Iowa picking them 3rd. You look at that offense. I mean, Spencer Petras, it's like a worse version of Graham Mertz. Yeah, the kid's got an unbelievable arm, and yes, he's Elite 11. But I've never seen a kid make more bad mistakes than Spencer Petras. And losing Goodson at running back is going to hurt them. And not only that, they lost Todd Linderbaum. I mean, probably one of the best centers to ever come out of that program. Which their offensive line, they just keep churning them out. Yeah. And I mean, you bring back a lot of like they bring back Connor Colby, Nick DeYoung, Mason Richmond. They're going to be young. They've got some development, but Todd Linderbaum was just a special type of offensive lineman. I question where you do that. Plus, you lost Charlie Jones to Purdue. You're really going to have to rely on that defense, which brings back a lot. I mean, there's no questions asked. This defense is legit. That linebacking core is crazy. Jack Campbell is a stud linebacker.
Yeah, he might be the best linebacker in college football. At least up there. But I go back to the Big Ten championship game, and it was like their defense kept them in the ball game. They kept punching Michigan's offense in the mouth, and then they get the ball back and could do nothing with it.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, Goodson's gone. They've got a redshirt sophomore and Gavin Williams, who's going to be taking over the starting running back role. They've got a good tight end in Sam Laporta, who we talked about and you brought up in your list of fantasy tight ends.
Yes.
Keegan Johnson is their starting wide receiver, along with Nico Ragini. But I'm just not sold on their offense, and I have to see it to believe it. And at this point, I've got them going third. Behind them, we talked about Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. I'm picking Purdue behind them, and then Nebraska, Illinois, and Northwestern to finish it out. How do you have it finishing?
I got Purdue, Nebraska, Illinois, Northwestern as well. I mean, I look at the top three teams and really tier them off. I think one of those three teams are going to win the Big Ten West, but Purdue could be the shocker team. Aiden O'Connell is an incredibly good quarterback. Yeah, losing David Bell hurts, but they are still so much depth at that receiver position at Purdue, and the way Jeff Brom throws it around. My biggest question is not only on the offensive side of the ball, I think they'll be fine, but defensively, losing George Karlaftis is gonna hurt. I mean, he was a special type of defensive player for the Boilermakers, and they just don't have the depth. I think, as usual, Purdue will knock somebody off they're not supposed to beat. They always do it. They've done against Ohio State multiple times, and I just can't see them bringing that to the top level and winning the West. But they would be that dark horse team if you don't pick one of the teams in the top three. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree with you. I like that team, and I like them a lot. I thought they showed me something in that bowl game against the University of Tennessee. Not having Bell in that game and still being able to put up the yards and the points that they were able to put up, kind of going back and forth with Hendon Hooker and the Vols offense really impressed me, especially missing their top wide receiver. Now, my biggest question mark going into this year is the team, as me and you mentioned on March 9th last year. We talked about this team because they finished 3-9, and that is the Nebraska Cornhuskers. This is going to be Coach Scott Frost last year if he cannot do something with this team. I mean, this is a team he was brought in to bring this program back, and they finished the year last year 1-8. Now, a lot of people are saying they were the greatest 3-9 team of all time. That means absolutely shit to me. So I don't care how close the games were. When you go 3-9 and you're 1-8 in the conference, that's not good. Adrian Martinez is gone. Honestly, I didn't think he was the problem, but they bring in Casey Thompson, graduate transfer out of Texas, to take over at quarterback. They've got Ramir Johnson at running back. What do you think about this Nebraska team, and can they get better?
Well, I mean, you look back at Nebraska last year, and for a 3-9 team, they weren't bad. Their biggest problem is when they made mistakes, they made catastrophic mistakes, especially on special teams. I mean, you look back at the Illinois game where they start off the game with a freaking not a safety. Was it a safety or a touchdown when what's his name dropped the ball in the end zone on that punt return against Illinois, and it cost them the game. I mean, constantly special teams and screw ups have cost this team over and over and over. Defensively, Nebraska's numbers were phenomenal last year. I mean, they really did an incredible job. Their biggest problem is just bad turnovers at the worst possible time. I mean, now you bring Mark Whipple as your OC in, and Mark Whipple likes to throw the ball. I mean, I know Pat Narduzzi had some choice words from Mark Whipple after he left, saying they didn't run the ball enough. But when you got a guy like Kenny Pickett, you want to throw the ball. Plus, Jordan Addison has been the best receiver in the country. Now, do I think that Nebraska has those type of receivers? No. I think they do got to rely on that running game. And like you mentioned before, Ramir Johnson comes back. The former USC transfer, Marquis Stepp, is going to be there at running back. And Casey Thompson's got an arm. He does have an arm. They just got to protect him. And Bryce Benhart out of Lakeville, Minnesota, they've moved him in from left tackle to right guard. He's got to be better. I mean, they've got to protect the quarterback better if they're going to do anything. But defensively, I mean, they're going to be tough. Nick Heinrich is a stud linebacker. This is just a quality program overall. But they got to go 7 or 8 wins. Otherwise, I mean, you look at at Frost. They got to move on.
Don't you think that do you agree with me that if they don't win 9-10 games, he's probably fired? I mean, maybe if he wins 8 games and shows some serious improvement.
I think if he wins 7 or 8, I think I think he goes 7 or 8, he could save his job. I mean, remember who the AD is there now. I mean, Trev Alberts isn't going to make a rash decision because at the end of the day, even if you fire him, who the hell do you bring in? I mean, I know who I would bring in, but I mean, I think that game in Dublin is going to be huge. I mean, you start off, the schedule's not that bad. In Dublin against Northwestern, then you come home to North Dakota, not North Dakota State, North Dakota. Yeah. Then you play home against Georgia Southern, should be a win. Then you play against Oklahoma. Now, traditionally, I would say that's a game you're going to get your butt kicked in. But they played well against them last year, and they get them in Lincoln. I think they could win with that coaching transfer. Home against Indiana, at Rutgers, at Purdue, before they hit those final 5 games, which is going to be murderer's row for Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if they go 7-5, I just don't know if that's going to be enough. I mean, is that enough improvement to show that the program's going in the right direction? I mean, maybe if they win specific games, like if they knock off one of the top tier teams and have a signature win, maybe I could see that. Obviously, they love him in Lincoln. I mean, this is a guy that was one of the greatest players in Cornhusker history, led them to a number of magical victories, and has proven at Central Florida that he can win football games. It's just it hasn't gone as hoped in Nebraska, and I think there's a lot of fans there that are disappointed. However, I've seen a lot of people fired up about this season, and a lot of people that are riding the Cornhusker bandwagon. Not sure where they're getting that, but I've seen it, and so we'll have to wait and see what happens with them. We'll have to wait and see if they can improve on last year. As you mentioned, I do agree with you. They did play well in some games, including the game against Ohio State. That was a pretty close ball game until late in the fourth quarter, when the Buckeyes really took over. But they played with them, and so they've got something there. It's just for whatever reason they haven't been able to close and haven't been able to finish in big games. I mean, we're talking about turnovers galore in the fourth quarter. We're talking about mistakes being made. And that's got to turn around, and that starts with the coach. So he's got to get it right. And I don't think firing a coordinator is going to save his job at this point.
No, I agree with you. One guy, the next team, Illinois, I'm actually kind of intrigued by, and more from the defensive side of the ball. I mean, Brian Walters did a phenomenal job once you get past that Virginia game. I mean, they gave up 20, 13, 14, 24, 18, 26, 33 to Iowa, and 14 to Northwestern. Defensively, they weren't a problem. And Ryan Walters, I think, is a name that people have got to keep their eye on as potential getting a head coaching job at a low major in the future. Because, I mean, with what they had coming back at Illinois, he did a really great job. And then Bielema did not want to run the old traditional Wisconsin offense, but really had no choice because the quarterback situation, and brought in Barry Lunney from UTSA to take over that offensive coordinator position. I could see Bielema building something. I still think it's going to take some time. Tommy DeVito, the transfer from Syracuse, I think it's going to be a huge upgrade at quarterback for them, though, overall for the Illini.
Yeah, I agree. And, they showed me some things last year that I really wasn't expecting. I had a couple of wins that kind of came out of nowhere. I know they finished 4-5, but 5-7 and 4-5 in the conference, but I was pretty impressed with the improvement that I saw out of the Illini overall. And, this guy has proven to be a winning coach when he was at Wisconsin. I know things didn't work out down in Arkansas for whatever reason, but, he's proven he can win in the Big Ten before. He doesn't have Barry Alvarez on his shoulder helping him out at this point, but he's going to have to get it done on his own this time. And I was somewhat impressed with what he did in year one. So, we'll see what happens there. What do you think about before we close this out? What do you think about Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald? Can he pull a rabbit out of the hat and win a couple of games this year? Because last year was a disappointing season for them.
Oh, well, I mean, offensively, they just were a disaster last year. I mean, I think they're going to see an upgrade, though. I think their running game, especially Peter Skoronski, is probably one of the best, if not the best offensive lineman in the Big Ten, will be a first-round draft choice when he comes out next April. I mean, defensively, they lost a lot, especially that core at linebacker. Can they get back to there? Northwestern's one of those teams you don't want to bet against because I've walked in the years where Northwestern was picked dead last and they end up winning the freaking conference. You cannot underestimate Northwestern overall.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So moving on, we'll get into the other side of the conference as well, as we've got, probably I think we both are picking the Buckeyes to finish number one, and we've got a former captain of the Buckeyes and the first team All Big Ten linebacker from 2010. Believe ready to join us now, and Brian Rolle. Let's see if we can hear him. Oh, there he is. Hey, Brian, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys well.
Oh, awesome, man. We really appreciate you coming on with us. I got to be honest with you, you're one of my favorite players of all time, man, and we are really pumped up to see you today. Just to kick things off, we want to talk a little bit about, it's almost here, man. College football is right around the corner. Just talk to us a little bit about what this time was like for you, right before the season kicked off in camp, trying to get things ready. What are your memories of, coming up to right before the season starts, trying to get things ready to go?
Well, I appreciate you guys having me, man. It's the time of the year I tell people where the grass, you can smell it in the grass. The air just feels different.
Yes.
And this year, I've been out of college for 12 years, but out of football for 7. And I still get the same feeling, the butterflies in my stomach, the anxiousness, the nervousness. And then spend time like now getting ready for the season. It's more about the mental right now, honestly. I think physically the guys are ready to go. I think it's a matter of the next couple of weeks of gelling as a team, getting the young guys in, getting the old guys with the young guys. That's the thing that we focus on with Tressel is, mentally you got to be ready to go because, physically you work all summer, you worked all spring, and you get to camp, it's just the mental grind.
Brian, what was your recruiting process like coming out of Amalaki in Florida? I was looking through some of the alumni that have come through the program, and it's an impressive list from Edgerrin James to J.C. Jackson, you name it. But what was that process like, and what did Coach Tressel do to encourage you to come to Columbus to play football?
Yeah, I'm going to correct the verbiage there. It's Immokalee.
That's right. Immokalee. Hey, what's funny is I literally looked up the pronunciation beforehand, and brain to mouth did not work out well. So I apologize about that.
It's a different name, man. I tell people when you see it, if you can say it, you're good. But the recruiting process for me, I tell people I always ask Coach Fickle, how did they find me? In one of the smaller schools in Florida. Obviously, we had Edgerrin James before me and Javaris James. But Tim Beckman was my recruiting coordinator, the DB coach at Ohio State. And I fell in love with him, honestly. And I had a chance to meet Luke Fickle and Coach Tressel. And I always tell people what stuck out to me was Jim Tressel never really talked football. It was more about me becoming a great man and being a better person once I leave the program. He obviously wouldn't have, came to my hometown and sat with my parents and recruited me if I couldn't play football. But he was – he hit so much on the personal side of me being a better person. And that's what drew me to Ohio State than some of the other bigger schools.
Yeah, we've had talked to a couple of your old teammates on here, and Donnie Nicky and some other guys, and everybody says the same thing, and it's been my experience too. I mean, Coach Tressel is not only one of the greatest coaches of all time, in my opinion, but he's also one of the best men that I've ever met. And, we've told some stories on here about that guy. And to me, he just, meeting him in person, he touched all the bases because he just was a genuine good guy. He always remembered my name. And I was like, how does this guy who meets hundreds of people every day know who the hell I am and remember my name? It just kind of really always stuck out to me. Just talk to us a little bit about what it was like playing for him. and what about his coaching style led to such success in the program?
Well, I'll tell people, it's rare in your lifetime you meet people that change your life. And most people say that they met someone who changed something about their life, but I mean someone who truly transformed who you are as an individual. And Jim Trustle's that guy. I take myself coming from a poor city in South Florida where the odds of being great and getting out weren't great. But he took the opportunity to come down from Ohio, recruit me, and then you see him in action around other players. Um, he's like that father figure away from being home, and he took to heart that every young man there was like his own child. And he held us all accountable for our actions, but also coached us and loved us through the mistakes that we made as young men and as athletes as well. And I tell you, like I said, he's one of the people in my life I could truly say to help transform me to who I am today. Every time I see him, it's like being away from home and not seeing your dad for a long time. You see him again, and you get excited like a little kid, and that's what it is when I see Coach Tressel.
Awesome.
Because he is, I mean, when I speak of great coaches, I would say Jim Tressel and my high school coach Luke Fickle would be the top three guys I've had the opportunity to play under.
Well, I mean, you kind of led me into my next question, where, like, what was that best piece of advice? You've talked about Coach Tressel and Coach Fickle and Coach Beckman. I mean, of any of the people, even from pros down to high school, what's the best piece of advice that you received that helped you not only as a football player but as a man that you could kind of pass on to as well?
So I remember my high school coach. I remember being hesitant about leaving home. I grew up in from Immokalee, and never really left the state of Florida other than visiting family, actually up in Cleveland. I just remember him saying that, you got to take chances in life. And sometimes you get many of them, sometimes you only get one. And fortunate enough, I took the opportunity, took the chance that my coach told me to take. And it worked out. And I say that, I live my life by that today, is just betting on yourself and take a chance. And I can thank John Weber, my high school coach, for that advice.
Nice. And, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I want to go back to it because I've really been impressed with the transition, that went from Coach Tressel, and obviously there was that 1 year in between there, and then it went to Urban Meyer and then was handed over to Ryan Day. I've been pretty impressed with Coach Day since he took over. I mean, 34-4, obviously getting it done in the win column, but I like what he's done off the field as well. I like how he's proven that he cares about his kids and he cares about the team, not just, as football players, but also, in their life. In fact, the story with Harry Miller and, being behind him as he decided to retire because of, issues that he was having off the field. And to me, that hit home because this is a guy that doesn't just do it for the cameras. He really cares. I just want to get your thoughts on what do you feel like Ryan Day's done so far since taking over at Ohio State, and what are your feelings about him as their coach right now?
Yeah, I would say I am agreeing with you on, he gives me that younger Coach Tressel vibe where, no dig at Urban Meyer. He did a great job and is a great coach in his own right, but I think Urban Meyer brings that homey. Ryan Day brings that homey feel back to Ohio State to where, players of my, decade, I would say, feel more welcome back. And the players of today, it feels like a family. I don't feel like when you go to the Woody Hayes Center, it feels like it's a business being run there. It feels like it's a family of guys doing what they love to do and getting a job done. And I'll tell you what, I had a chance to meet with Coach Day a few times, and we golfed together a little bit. And you can genuinely get that feel of a guy who enjoys what he does, who puts family first, who puts team first. And you can see it through the guys. You can see the attitude of our team, how it's just a little bit different. I think Urban Meyer did a great job of getting the program back to where it needed to be. And I think that Ryan Day has done an immaculate job of bringing that home feel, that team feel, that family feel back to Ohio State. And there's another coach I could say that would have done the same, maybe other than maybe a Luke Fickle.
Yeah.
When you played in Canada, what was the biggest struggle you had from just transitioning to the American game to the Canadian game? Because there's so many little unique things about the game that are just like different than watching the NFL or college football. What was the hardest transition you had in that?
I tell people, I wasn't a defensive back in the CFL, so for me that wasn't tough. The hardest part is like our special teams here. You punt the ball, you go down, you make a tackle, or the guy called the fair catch, and all is done. Whereas in Canada, you got to give the guy 5 yards instead of, I think it's a yard or two now, the halo roll. So that was one big thing. I think I probably got 2 penalties on that just because you're not used to it.
Yeah.
And then also the fumble of the ball. If they fumble the ball and you just bat it out of bounds, then it's the defense's ball.
Yeah.
Little things like that made it tougher to transition. Obviously, the bigger field, the wider field, wasn't that big of a deal. But I tell people, you come from the U.S. and you play in Canada, man, you got to respect their game because it's unique to Canada. But it was fun. It was an awesome. I tell people it's probably some of the most fun football I had since like high school, where you just genuinely have fun playing the game.
Sorry, Nate. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, buddy.
Just the receivers being in motion, that coming up to the line that fast at the snap, it's just got to be tough too as well. Plus, I had to explain my son the rouge and what a rouge is in Canadian football too as well, because he was like sitting there scratching his head while we were watching one game on ESPN one night, what that was. So, yeah.
Yeah, the game, man. Our defensive backs struggle a lot from the U.S. because the kids from Canada, they played in the same kind of football in high school and university there, whereas our guys here used to being stationary. No one can move towards the line of scrimmage before the ball is snapped. And then, day one of football camp, you got to learn what a waggle is and how to defend against it. So you typically see our defensive back struggle early on, but I think athletic-wise, coming from the U.S., playing at some big schools, and you go to Canada, I think athleticism-wise, we're probably a notch better. It's just that they're more skilled at what they do because they're, more used to playing that style of football.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, as we get ready for the season and the Big Ten's kicking it off, in week 1 with Notre Dame coming into the shoe to play Ohio State, I mean, that is going to be a huge game. Obviously, tickets going for around $4,000 just to get in the door, man. It's a little bit crazy. In fact, I got to be honest, I sold mine after I saw the prices going. As much as I wanted to go, I was like, I'm going to go to a different game and feed my daughter for a few weeks. So I sold those tickets, but I'm going to be watching, man. And I think about how crazy that game and that atmosphere is going to be. What's your biggest memory? What was your favorite memory of playing at the shoe and playing for the Buckeyes? What really sticks out to you as the biggest moment that you enjoyed when you had your amazing career going on?
Well, I always go back to the first game we played at Ohio State. I want to say it was Youngstown State, my freshman year. And I remember coming to 1 versus 2 in 2006, Ohio State, Michigan. Yeah. And, being a fan at that point or a recruit, I'm standing in the stands and like, wow, this is what football is. But then coming out of that tunnel, being a part of the team just a year later, man, I literally came to tears because you can watch it from the stands for 40 years, but until you run out of that tunnel with the scarlet and gray on and you're representing the team and you're out there battling, man, it's an awesome feeling. Yeah. And it's the best 4 years I've had in my life outside of being my wife and my kids. And I think about it all the time. If I could just, go back and replay 4 years over and over and over again, it'll be those 4 years at Ohio State because, it's a time that you can't even put it into words as I can now because you just have to live it to understand exactly, what it does to you.
Yeah. What was the hardest place to play at for you?
Oh man. I would give it to Penn State or Wisconsin. Penn State, man, is, oh boy, it's that again, it's one of those things where you can't even put it into words because it's so loud. I remember if you could think of taking a beehive and putting it in a bucket and letting the bees go crazy, that's what it feels like in your helmet, where it's just rattling and vibrating. Wisconsin is nuts just because it's a small stadium, but you wouldn't know that it's only, 75,000 people there. They know how to bring the kids out. They know how to bring the fans out and have a good time. And that jump around, man, is everything that you imagine it is when you watch it on TV.
Oh yeah, dude. That place is pretty rocking. I've been over there a couple of times, and it was pretty crazy watching the game there. And I'm pretty excited. College football is our favorite time of the year, and it's coming up. It's coming up quicker than you can imagine. And I feel like this, for some reason, this just feels like one of those years where the Buckeyes have got a chance, man. I feel like they've got a good shot at winning it all. Obviously you still follow the Buckeyes. What do you think about their chances this year, and can they get it done and go all the way?
I think so. And, bringing over Jim Knowles with the defense, I tell people I follow our defense more than offense, looking at the game just because that's what I played. And
Yep.
I'm excited about that defense, man. I know it's kind of a 3-3-5, 4-2-5, what have you. And I just think if we buy into it, I think defense is a lot about buy-in when you get to this level of football, because you all can play. All the guys can play. We have the athletes to do it. But I just think if they take to heart that Coach Knowles is here to make us a better team, that side of the ball, man, that will be our biggest question, if there's any, is how well can have our guys adapted to that defense, and do we believe that we can be great? Because at the end of the day, if you believe you can be great at Ohio State, then we'll be hoisting the trophy at the end of the year as national champions.
Who do you see on that defense right now this year that could step up, that's really impressed you, that could take it to that next level?
I like Hicks, man.
Yeah.
14, man. I just think when you watch a player, man, that just he reminded me of, remember Bob Sanders, who played for the
Yep.
Indianapolis Colts, and I was a kid watching him play.
Yep.
And I mean, he's obviously a little bigger than Bob Sanders was out of Iowa. But man, you talk about a guy that's a game changer, who you can make, your middle linebacker or defensive end probably, and the guy's gonna make plays. I said Hickman.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be an awesome player, man. I know we got some young defensive ends who are going to be really, really good, but I think for Ohio State for many years we had some great secondaries, and in over the last couple of years, I would say we might have been, maybe a B in that category. But I think on the back end, that's where we're going to have to get better. And if they do, then again, like I said, we're going to be national champions at the end of the year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think when we've had those teams that have won the national championship, we've had those shutdown corners, we've had those playmaking safeties that have got it done, and I think that's crucial for this season. But I also think, like you mentioned, and piggybacking off your comment, those ends have got to step up. You think about the success in recent history. It was Chase Young, it was the Bosa brothers. We had those guys that were just wreaking havoc on the opposing teams' quarterbacks, and I feel like that we're primed for another year like that. Just talk to us a little bit about how that pass rush makes things easier for the linebackers and the DBs. I mean, you've been out there, you played. If they're getting after the guy, surely that makes things easier for the rest of the crew, right?
Oh, 100%. And I think on the back end, when you got some hogs up front who's going to get after the quarterback, we already know that you got 3.5 seconds for the guy to get the ball out. So if the defensive ends are doing their job, D tackles are doing their job, there's not a whole lot of coverage that's needed. And that's where those guys on the back end shine, because the ball's coming out hot. Then we know how to play from there. I think we've fallen in trouble before when we couldn't get pass rushes in and the quarterback is, 5-6 seconds in the pocket. And, I mean, you could be the best defensive back in the country and you couldn't cover someone that long. But it makes it so much easier when you got guys, like you said, the Bosa brothers and those guys who just made quarterbacks' lives a living heck, around Ohio State for the last few years. So I think this year, if we get the defensive ends going, the back end will definitely be what we're accustomed to seeing, just shut down.
Awesome, man. Hey, Brian, we really appreciate your time today, and best of luck to you with everything going forward. We loved watching you play at your career at Ohio State and the Eagles and in Canada. So definitely enjoy the upcoming season, and hopefully we can have you back on sometime and talk a little bit more.
Thank you, Brian.
Guys. Thanks. You guys have a great day. OH.
All right. Have a good one, man.
See ya.
Man. Thank you so much. All right, that was awesome. That was Brian Rolle, former All Big Ten first-team linebacker for the Buckeyes out of Florida, played for the Philadelphia Eagles, played for the Toronto Argos in Canada, and was kind of an undersized dude that always overachieved and always got it done on the field.
He always had a hat on somebody.
Yeah,
he
man.
Always.
he led the Buckeyes in tackles and just was a guy who some people thought was, like I mentioned, undersized, but figured out a way to get it done, and always was getting after people and making plays and leading the team from that middle linebacker position. I mean, lots of middle linebackers usually are not under 6 feet tall and, around 200 pounds, but this guy could get after it and could get it done all over the field. And I loved hearing his stories today about, I love that story when I asked him, what was your favorite moment about, being a Buckeye and playing college football. And he was very candid in that, he was bawling, crying the first time he ever ran out of the tunnel out onto Buckeye Stadium in game one as a freshman. I think that speaks volumes about what the atmosphere is like in that place.
Well, not only that, I mean, the way he talked about Coach Tressel, and it's not about football, it's about life and making him a better person. I mean, heck, being that second father figure that, since he let, being away from his family. I mean, we've heard that story time and time again from people like Donnie Nicky and others about the impression he had. It was bigger than just playing football. It was about making a man. Yeah. And it's great hearing those type of stories and how he's taken those things and put it into his own life too as well.
Yeah, man, he's just a really great guy and was an unbelievable football player. And what some people don't know is that Brian Rolle was related and cousins with Samari Rolle and Terrell Rolle, Myron Rolle, who played for Florida State and then played for the Tennessee Titans and is now a brain surgeon.
Dr. Myron Rolle.
Dr. Myron Rolle, thank you, Dr. Rolle. And, two other of some of the greatest defensive backs in college football history, and Antrell Rolle, who played for Miami, and then Samari Rolle, who played for Florida State. And then he's also cousins with Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco. So, this is a family that's got some freaking talent in its genes. Can
you imagine the football game at their family reunion's got to be like? I guarantee you, Vegas is going to probably have some odds on that game.
Who do you pick first?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it depends on how you want to play. I mean, if you want defensive prowess going first, you pick Brian or Antrell. If you want to just try and score points, I guess you go with Ocho. I mean, I don't know, man. This is unbelievable to have that many people under the same family tree play big-time college football and professional football as well. So very cool having Brian on today and talking about the Big Ten and talking about the Big Ten West. Before we get out of here, I just wanted to finish up and talk about the rest of the Big Ten. Yeah, I mean, I think we need to and I think we need to finish that up before we leave here because as we talked about in the beginning, I feel like the East is the better side of the conference. And, I just want to know, I'm going to let you go first on this one as who you've got one and who you've got two.
Obviously we all know who one is, so let's just skip. I think that's the tier under themselves. And then I see a drop off and 2, 3, 4 kind of fits in its own tier. I personally am going to go Penn State. They got to improve that running game. Nick Singleton's got to really do a lot better because that's been a problem since Journey Brown left. But you look at that passing game, I mean, with Parker Washington and Camry Lambert-Smith, I mean, they've got solid receivers there. Yeah, they lose Jahan Dotson, but they're pretty good. And plus on defense, you got Joey Porter back and Jair Brown in that back seven. I mean, that's going to be a quality team. Then I would go with the school up north. I think – man, they lost so much, but they bring a lot back, but they're so unknown. That's why you got to really put them third. The quarterback situation, I mean, are they still what kind of offense are they going to run? That's going to be the big deal.
That's my biggest thing. And what I wanted to ask you about, how big of a deal is it losing both coordinators? I mean, they're downplaying it like crazy up there, but certainly in your mind, losing both the offensive and defensive coordinators on a team that went to the college football playoff is going to play a role, is it not?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, especially defensively. I mean, you lose Hutch, Ajabo, Daxton Hill. That's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, those are great players. You don't just plug and play guys like that. There's going to have to be a downgrade to that. And I know everybody's picking him second because of recency bias. Man, I could pick him as low as fourth because, there's just, Michigan State, I'd put in that number 4 spot. Granted, they lose Walker at running back, but they bring Jalen Reed back. They bring Peyton Thorne back. The defense, especially the back seven's got to step up.
Yeah, I agree. After we get past Penn State, who do you got 3-4?
Oh, 3-4 it's Penn State, then Michigan, then Michigan State.
Okay. And how do you feel like the Spartan season's going to come off? Last year was a pretty tremendous year considering, that was year 1, was it not, for their coach?
No, year 2.
Year 2?
Yeah, it was year 2. We're now in year 3. Okay. I think the reason why I got him at 4 is I think you're going to see, not only did they lose a receiver, but losing Kenneth Walker at running back. He was a game changer. And Broussard, who's a really quality running back at Colorado, and Jalen Berger from Wisconsin, I don't think he holds a candle. Walker was just that much better. And if their defensive backs can't stop anything, I think that could be a problem. Quite frankly, I could see my number 5 team knocking off both Michigan and Maryland, Michigan State, and that's Maryland. If they can stay healthy, that receiving core is freaking crazy with Demas and Raheem Jarrett. Plus, you have Tunga Viola at quarterback. That is their biggest problem year to year has been just staying healthy. If they could stay healthy, this sounds crazy. There's legit shot they could finish second in the Big Ten East.
Yeah, and that would be a tremendous season for them. I like what Mike Loxley's doing down there. I know that it didn't go as well as they'd hoped last year, finishing the conference 3-6, but they were 7-6 overall. And at times they flashed to me and really showed like they could be a team that could get it done. And as you mentioned, that receiving core is, Raheem Jarrett might be one of the best receivers in the entire country.
Remember on signing day, they flipped him from LSU.
Yeah.
And that's saying something when you can flip an LSU recruit to Maryland.
Yes, and he went to St. John's College High School, which we do know someone who graduated from there.
A little somebody, yeah.
Somebody named Rico. So, we know that place can definitely produce some players. So
Go Gateway, by the way.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with them. But I'm with you. I feel like they can have a tremendous season and could definitely show us something. The 2 teams to me that are kind of flying under the radar, but I think have a chance to do something special in 2022, and that's Rutgers and Indiana. I know Indiana had a horrible season last year. They were 2-10, 0-9 in the conference. However, I believe they've got a good quarterback now. They got Vasilik, who transferred from Missouri. I feel like he's going to fix that position, at least on the whole. And I feel like Rutgers is getting better. 5-8 overall last year, not great, but I feel like they overachieved for the talent that they had.
Defensively, they're legit.
Yeah.
Offensively, they're that bad. They're worse than Iowa bad. But I think you just give them time. You've seen what Schiano has done in the past and the way they're recruiting, especially the state of New Jersey. Think of all the running backs they've lost that were originally committed. Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley. They were originally Rutgers commits that decommitted. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but Rutgers can turn that tide. I have Indiana ahead of Rutgers just because I think their offense is a little bit better, and I like what Tom Allen does on defense overall. Connor Bazelak's got a live arm, and I think he gets to show it in Indiana.
Yeah, I do too. They were hamstrung last year with Penix's injury, and then the second string quarterback went down. They were on their third quarterback at times.
Yeah.
And I feel like that, just gave them not much of a chance to win any of those games because they couldn't score any points.
No.
And they had a good wide receiver in Fry Fogel, who's since I believe moved on, and got some other good athletes. But I believe in Tom Allen. I don't know why, but that guy just makes me want to go out and put my fat butt in some pads and hit somebody because he's a good coach, in my opinion. And I feel like he can get it done. And can get those kids to believe if they can just get that one win. You know, you feel like in 2020 when they got that overtime victory against Penn State, the rest of the season just kind of went like this because they all believed after that. And I don't think they can, you know, have another season like that, but I feel like they can definitely improve upon what happened last year.
I think Cam Jones is going to step up and be that leader that Micah McFadden was last year.
Yeah.
I mean, you look in the 2020 season, they did so well because they did such a good job on plus minus turnover rating. I mean, they were like plus 11 or plus 12. It was something absolutely insane. And they used to score at a ridiculous rate off turnovers. If they get back to that, I could see them bowling again.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. But should be an interesting year in this conference. We've already discussed you know, a lot of these conference breakdowns. I believe we already did the SEC, correct?
Correct.
We did the Big Ten. We've
The
got
ACC.
left. We've done the ACC. The only conferences we've got left are the Pac-12 and the Big 12, if I'm not mistaken.
What about the MAC?
Well, yeah, we'll probably throw that in as well. But I'm talking about the Power Five.
Yes, the Power
as we
Five.
stand here
Absolutely.
today.
Absolutely.
But we'll get to those. We've got a couple weeks left before the season kicks off, so we'll have time to do that. But awesome show today, man. I loved talking to Brian Rolle. I'm so glad that he came on the show. He's just a really cool guy, a really great guy, and was an awesome player and had some really cool stories. So I'm glad we got to talk to him today.
Perfect. Well, Nate, always good to see you.
Yep, you too, brother. Take it easy. Keep learning about some college football, and we'll come back and get some more of your knowledge next week. All right, brother?
All right. We'll talk soon.
All right, buddy. Have a great day. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you missed any of the show, go back, pull it up at man_coverage on Twitter. Or you can also go to YouTube and type in Man Coverage Nate or Man Coverage Bonneville, and it'll come up and you can check out all of the interviews and catch that Brian Rolle interview if you missed any of it. So have a great rest of your Sunday and enjoy the beginning of your week. We'll talk real soon. Have a good one, brother.
See ya.